Oh boy, we got an Oppo dump big time here. Bigly Oppo dump. Top of the Daily Mail exclusive. GOP, I am quoting here. GOP presidential hopeful Nikki Haley did cheat on her husband with her comms consultant and a married lobbyist in steamy trysts in her Cadillac and hotels before she became governor. Sworn affidavits and new witnesses claim. And the headline the Daily Mail has below the article is Frisky Nikki. Clay, I mean, this is classic. I mean, it's right before New Hampshire. This is the kind of thing, we were talking about Nikki Haley for VP before. Did this come from the Trump camp? I think you would have to think so.
Could have come from the DeSantis camp, but I think usually the general direction is whoever stands to benefit the most is usually the leaker. So you would think that the Trump camp has the most. Here's what my only thing on the Trump camp. If you're supporting Trump, you're not supporting Trump because he's been a really faithful husband.
Well, but see, this is what I was going to ask you. And I'm not, does the public still have very much in their mind a double standard
for women compared to men?
Yes. Female infidelity in America. I'm not saying it's fair. I'm just asking if the double standard exists. If a woman cheats on her, in this case, combat veteran husband, and she's running for higher office. By the way, this is all alleged. Maybe none of this is true at all.
I'm sure she'll deny it.
Yeah,
I'm sure she'll
hear
deny
what Nikki Haley has to say. It's the top story in the Daily Mail right now, though, so I'm sure they've got real sources. Is that a different calculation for voters if they believe it?
Well, I don't know. I mean, let's just kind of take a step back. This was the whole Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton thing, right? Like Bill Clinton, I think quite clearly not a faithful husband, slept with a lot of random women, and everybody knew, and they voted for Bill Clinton anyway. Then he had an affair with an intern in the White House office, and even then people were like, yeah, it doesn't really surprise me. Think about where we were with Bill Clinton, that he could have sexual relations with an intern and people weren't really surprised, and he kept his job. Now, it's a different era now, but Donald Trump's been married, 4 times? 3 times. And I think most people have said, I don't really care about his personal life. The same thing seemed to happen with Kristi Noem. That story, we need to break this down more because this story just broke. But this is
an Oppo. This is an Oppo punch, though.
Yes.
This is throwing the sink into things. All right, we'll talk about it.
The New Hampshire primary is Tuesday. Daily Mail story that Nikki Haley cheated on her husband before she became governor. It's the number one story on the Daily Mail. I would expect that virtually every media outlet in the country will pick it up. Now, there was a story about Kristi Noem, who's the current governor of South Dakota, that she had engaged in an affair with somebody affiliated with her campaign. And that story people didn't really care. She's a woman, governor sitting right now, one of the leading VP candidates in theory. If you look at the gambling odds markets, one of the consistently top favorites. It's possible that people are going to look at this and just in the era in which we live now, say in a post-Bill Clinton, in a post-Donald Trump era, when Joe Biden himself has been accused of sexual assault on a staffer and everybody just kind of said, I don't care. In a post-Me Too world where it does feel like the whole Me Too universe is kind of ground down to, I know Brett Kavanaugh was the number one target probably of the entire Me Too universe. But my question is, and I don't know the answer on this, are people over extramarital things and affairs, particularly because the couple stayed together?
I have a different sense of the overall trajectory here. Just hear me out on it. I think the people who didn't care about Bill Clinton were Bill Clinton voters. I think a lot of other people thought it was grotesque and wanted him to actually get impeached and removed from office over the lies about it, right? So it's not like...
Well, that was the affair in office, which is a little bit different, right, than the pre-affair. Right,
but what I'm saying is, it wasn't sometimes the Democrat narrative, like if you watch the Bill Maher show, it's the whole country didn't care. No, actually cared a lot about what Bill Clinton did and almost ended his presidency. So, what I'm getting to though is, Trump, third wife, he's got some, people are okay with it. They say they want the guy in the office that does the, that pushes the policies. I think people are okay when their team does it now.
Oh, yeah,
Which is
certainly
different,
that's the case.
right?
Yes.
So it's not like, oh, we've all moved on to this new place. It's people. I mean, the Joe Biden sexual assault allegation, which you never hear about.
Yeah.
Okay, they just to line this up, they pretended, and it was grotesque and it was a lie, but they pretended that Brett Kavanaugh maybe tried to like grope. That was really the allegation. A girl 40 or 35 years ago or
When
something
he was a
who
minor.
didn't
When he was
who
a minor, Brett
when he
Kavanaugh.
was a minor, and she didn't remember what year this allegedly happened and couldn't prove that she had ever even met him.
I know.
And he had no memory of it. It was a fable. It was a bull crap story. Kamala Harris ran with it. One of the ugliest things I have ever seen in American politics was the lies they tried to use just so they could kill babies through abortion. The lies they tried to use with Brett Kavanaugh. Now, just to juxtapose that, you got Joe Biden, Senate staffer, works for him, young woman, says that he, violated her. Media doesn't care at all. Doesn't care at all. He had time alone with her. They knew each other. She worked for him. She didn't lie about anything.
She
Media
talked
doesn't
about it
care at
back
all.
in the 1990s when this initially happened. There
Yes.
were witnesses to say that she said that. I think her mom even called into Larry King. Do you remember all the different details associated with it?
Credible, an
Yes.
entirely credible allegation, and they just pretend like it absolutely never happened. Now, but this is where I get to like my team, your team kind of thing, right? With Nikki Haley, why have we been saying now? First, to be fair and to be clear, this may all be a total lie. It reeks of Oppo dump right before New Hampshire. It couldn't be any more obvious that that's what this is. It's an Oppo dump story, but Daily Mail's running with it with sources and with named individuals. The men are brought into this as well. Their photos are up too, right? So it's not like, remember when they ran the John McCain affair story on the front page of the New York Times? Very
and then he
thinly
refused to
sourced.
speak to the New York Times for the rest of his career, I think, John McCain, because they ran that story.
Yeah, and and I'm somebody. I'm not naive about this stuff. Okay, Republicans and Democrats, unfortunately, in politics, will cheat on their wives. I didn't believe that McCain story based on the context, the way they ran it, the sourcing, the way they're going after this Nikki Haley story. It could be totally false. But here's what I want to get to on the politics of this, because people are going to believe what they believe at this point. We've been talking all along. Suburban moms is Nikki Haley's. That's like the special thing that she brings to the table, especially if she's on a Trump ticket. How do suburban moms react to this? Not the whole electorate, not the primary, Republican base. Do you think that women who are married, who live in the suburbs of America, a lot of whom are Nikki Haley fans, or that's maybe perhaps her strongest demographic in the GOP, that and people who like forever wars, do you think, though, that this affects their thinking about Nikki Haley?
It's a good question. So my initial read on this was before she got involved in politics, and she is still married. She has 2 kids, and to me, the reason why I was using Bill Clinton as an example is just we've been through all these scandals, because this reminds me of the Bill and Hillary Clinton. Remember the 60 Minutes interview they did where they talked about challenges in their marriage, and it was a huge...
Bill was accused of rape, just to be clear. Not
No
just
doubt.
an affair. He was accused by a woman on the record of rape before he was president. Go ahead.
And everybody just kind of said, hey, this is before I think he even was the nominee. I think this was when he was running like in the New Hampshire primary cycle in like 1992. And Democrats still said, okay, we're going to pick him. We think he's the best option. And he ended up getting elected. And then obviously he has the affair, which is a different dynamic because it's current as opposed to in the past. So my general read is people who like Nikki Haley will still like Nikki Haley. And people who don't like Nikki Haley will not like her. And this won't change very much. That's my general read. I could be wrong. We'll open up phone lines. I think most people just kind of feel, this is, again, my general takeaway. I think most people just kind of feel like this is kind of sorted and that you don't want to dive into everybody's relationships and everything else. And if she and her husband stayed together, theoretically, he knows whether it happened or not. So I just think it's kind of
There's another component here.
And I think the Trump angle is also interesting.
if this is, does anyone think we're opening up lines here, folks? Because there's I'm sure a lot of broad opinions out there on this one. It's a Friday. Let's take your calls. Does anyone think this isn't Trump Oppo? And then, if it is Trump Oppo, why now? You want to win New Hampshire. You are concerned about there's no chance Nikki Haley's going to win the presidency, but you don't even want Nikki Haley to get a win in New Hampshire, or you want to crush her in New Hampshire so it's all over now. I mean, it's brass knuckles time. I don't know what else.
That's why I think you have to raise. It could be somebody else. The only other person who's in the race is the DeSantis crew, and they want to go one-on-one v. Trump, and they might think this knocks her out of the race, and then it leaves DeSantis able to go one-on-one against Trump. I'm just saying, if you're looking DeSantis, at it,
I mean, look, those guys, you see them on TV, they're nice people. They're Boy Scouts, man. Some of the people that are in Trump's orbit, they play for keeps.
Okay, there's other people who don't like Nikki Haley. Vivek's team? Would somebody like in Vivek's team, now that he's out of the race, be like, whatever, we don't even care, like we hate Nikki Haley, we're going to dump this? I think there's lots of people that would have had access to this. I don't think that there's anybody at the top level of these campaigns that wouldn't be aware. They do all their deep dive Oppo research. I think, honestly, this is a good point by you. If it's tracked back to a campaign, I think the world in which we live in now, people are angrier at the campaign that leaked it and tried to destroy her family life and this is my take, and tried to destroy that than they are about what might have happened 20 years ago. And I'm not trying to defend Nikki Haley, but if you're a diehard Trump supporter, Donald Trump has not been faithful to his wives, all right? I'm not saying that is a reason not to vote for him. I voted for him. I don't even think it impacts whether...
This is a matter of public record. There's no dispute about it. Yes.
I don't think it impacts whether or not he's a good president or a bad president. I personally don't care who the president sleeps with. If Joe Biden was actually a decent president and he had 46 different affairs, but the budget was balanced and we had 3% inflation and 3% unemployment and 3% mortgages, I'd be like, I wish he didn't do it. I feel bad for his wife, but I care more about the fate of the country than I do an individual relationship. But we're going to take your calls. I'm curious how you guys all would react to this. Again, Daily Mail, big story. How did it get there? Is it true? What happens next?